A lot of people just kind of get together and talk about what they do, their perspective, and exchange ideas. I think I think a lot of times people are afraid to do that. They want to like keep their ideas to themselves, but I maybe share too much. As a cop, I'm never really worried about that. My philosophy is like, give everything you know, and then now you have to find something new to kind of separate you. And so that's kind of like really how I approach our team, even at Goshen. I want like everybody at our roasting facility to really be able to do the same thing. My name is Tony Auger. I am the Chief Coffee Officer over at Goshen Coffee in Edwardsville, Illinois.
Can you talk about how long you've been roasting and kind of a fun one, if you can share what the very first, not machine, but just thing you roasted coffee on?
Man, I don't even know how long it's been now since I started roasting. 10, 12 years, somewhere around there. And the first machine that I roasted on was actually a training machine. It was a San Franciscan 1-pounder. And I was doing a lot of just like manual entry every 15 seconds, writing down temperatures just to kind of get used to the whole roasting process.
Congratulations again on making it to U.S. Coffee Roasting Championship.
Thanks.
Going back to Houston and qualifiers, the format changed a lot from last qualifiers. It looked like it was tailored more towards preparing all the competitors for nationals. Can you talk about your experience roasting on site at qualifiers this year?
Yeah, so this year was like definitely different, being able to roast on site. I actually thought it was pretty challenging, which was awesome. I have a tendency of like, if I'm back at my own play, really being able to go down the rabbit hole and do some things that maybe not everybody can help to do. And so I thought it was a great way to like level the playing field, but also prepare all the competitors for the national competition.
Your experience with the competition, this is 2 years in a row for you. For qualifiers, what was your experience like with the actual competition coffee itself?
Yeah. I thought it was a really interesting coffee. I actually roast a lot of Guatemalan coffee so I was kind of familiar with what I should kind of expect. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't like a terrible coffee, but there was some issues I saw with the green prep that were really just like kind of indicative of Guatemalan coffees. Guatemala in general has had a rough time when it comes to preparation of coffee. The infrastructure there is kind of just like really kind of crumbling, and so you'll see a lot of like mill issues. Or if there, I think like a big issue I see in Guatemala a lot is that there are what's called like hungry months, where basically the producer has stopped having income from coffee side of their business, and so they have to really be lean. A lot of times when that happens, you'll get a producer who tries to rush their harvest to get money faster, which I feel is no fault, but the end result, you can actually find a lot of like underripes in the coffee. And I did end up seeing a lot of those. Most of the time that can be taken out during the milling process, but if they do sneak through, they can really affect the quality of the cup. I did find a lot, so I ended up spending a lot of time kind of like sorting those out to try to get a much cleaner cup of coffee.
Yeah, and it shows, testament to your preparation and understanding the coffees. You placed in fourth.
Yeah.
Cup. Yeah, you're fourth overall. So yeah, great work. And thanks for providing some context about, the coffee itself at origin. When you compete, coffees are going to be cupped like within 24 hours, after roasting. What's your approach to competition roasting compared to what you do, day to day at Goshen?
Yeah, honestly, it's really similar. So we cup everything that we roasted the day before, and we cup within 24 hours. And so, a lot of times we're making adjustments on our roast based on what we tasted yesterday. And that's every day we do that. And then the idea is that we want to make sure that like every day you end up with a new best roast, right? And so constantly pushing towards that. I mean, it's exactly what we do at Goshen. So it kind of makes the competition itself a little bit easier, I think, for people who are able to cup that much production.
It's an interesting insight. Yeah, very different from other competitors that I've spoken to. So I love how everyone has like these different and unique approaches. Touching upon making it back-to-back years, kind of reflecting. So I believe you also did cup tasters too last year. And you're doing cup tasters again this year as well? Yeah. How have you, if you can kind of reflect a bit, how have you grown as a coffee professional since US Coffee Championships in Portland last year?
I've been like doing competitions on and off for a really long time. So it's honestly, it's one of those type of things where like I always recommend it to people. It's going to make you a better coffee professional no matter what, even if all you take away from it is like learning from your peers. The cool thing about I really like about competition is, seeing what you can actually do to make yourself stand out, right? And so there's only so far you can go in the industry if you are doing just what you need to do to kind of like get by or to get the job done by the end of the day. But when you push yourself by doing things like competitions, you really start to find out like how you can advance the industry or like what new things you could potentially think of that no one else has thought yet, and then how to implement those on your day-to-day job. So like going back to back years, I mean, the best part about it was really just, it had been a while since I did cup tasters again. So just getting back into that rhythm, and it felt really good this year. I like surprised myself and got them all right, like crazy fast. And so that felt really good. But then also like in roasting competition, I think like, I had never roasted on those strongholds before, and up until the national competition last year, and just being able to like actually roast on them last year and seeing how that competition would be, I think like greatly helped. And just my understanding of like what I had to look at as a workflow or how I could like organize my time properly more than anything else, because it's really hard if you've never roasted on, that style of roaster before.
Yeah, I love that, even though you're many years of being in the industry and competing, you still find ways how can you improve and also share knowledge too, because I mean, looking at the list of finalists, it's a lot of them are like you, Tony, the ones that competed, that made it to Portland last year too. So that's really cool seeing you guys, make it to the back-to-back years. Your position at Goshen, Expo's coming up and it's going to be in your home state, although it's like I think a 4 or 5 hour drive from where you're based out of.
Everything out of here is 4 to 5 hour drive no matter what. So
you've been in the industry for well over a decade and competing. Have coffee professionals reached out to you, whether for advice about competing or, is coaching something that you're looking into or already doing?
For sure. Brewers Cup stuff. It was, again, the same type of thing as I think the roasting competition, where a lot of people just kind of get together and talk about what they do, their perspective, and exchange ideas. I think a lot of times people are afraid to do that. They want to like keep their ideas to themselves, but I maybe share too much. I'm never really worried about that. My philosophy is like, give everything you know, and then now you have to find something new to kind of separate you. And so that's kind of like really how I approach our team, even at Goshen. I want like everybody at our roasting facility to really be able to do the same thing. And so we roast on a Loring, which if you are really good at like understanding automation, you could make roasting the easiest job possible. And so if that's the case for our employees, what I really want to make sure is like, how do we develop them further, right? So that's why cupping is so important to us, being able to fine tune your palate, being able to then understand like when we taste this in the roast and we can look at the roast profile, like now we as a team can understand like how we can make this coffee better, right? Less focus on like the day-to-day, like kind of monotony of roasting, but just like really how can we push ourselves? And that's like whenever I talk to anybody when it comes to like education or even just like training, like my big thing is always just like, if you stop pushing yourself, you're just going to be stagnant, right? And like, if that's the case, then you can work any job. Like if you want to be stagnant, like go work a desk job, go, be a tax guy, like wearing coffee, like the coffee tastes delicious. Like every single day you can potentially have the best cup of coffee you've ever had. So you got to always strive for that.
I love that. And, because Expo will be in your home state, what do you look most forward to, going into Chicago? I guess competing competing first, for roasters, but also just your experience in general that you're excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I love Chicago. It's always a fun day trip for us down here in the St. Louis area. The cool thing is, like, I know we'll have a big St. Louis crew, so there'll be a lot of people. We have a pretty big coffee town, so I'm sure we'll see a lot of people up there being involved. It's also just really cool for our team at Goshen. Like we don't have a huge team, but we have 2 cafes, and I think a lot of times, you only have a certain amount of people you can bring to an event like this. But being that it's just a train ride away, really, for us, we're going to be able to kind of schedule and say like, okay, we want this team to show up on this day and hang out for a day, and then this team show up on this day. So I really think it's going to be a great experience for like our team, because they're going to be able to understand like the broader context of the coffee industry and just kind of see like where Goshen fits inside of that, right? And meet all the people that we work with when it comes to producers or exporters and importers, and even for the people in our cafe to meet the manufacturers of the equipment they use. You know, it's just a great learning experience for all involved.
Expecting to see a huge contingent of the Goshen family.
Yeah, we should be sending. We're gonna rent a house and we're gonna send a bunch of people up, which will be fun. Like even if it's just like, I think like one thing we always try to do is work with the different companies that we work with and different vendors, and then just reach out and be like, hey, is there any way that we can like collab together on something? And a lot of times that's hard, especially if it's just like me and the owner. Like if we're just flying all the way out to Portland, but being able to say like, okay, no, everyone can drive up if they want to. It allows us that opportunity to work with more and more people.
Thank you again for the time. I got one more question for you. This is more of just like a self-reflection one. You're over a decade in the industry. Can you share your most memorable experience thus far in your career in coffee?
It's too long for it to make it to the video, so I'll try to condense it as much as possible. It's actually a really recent memory. I previously came from the export and import side of the green coffee before I got to Goshen. And I had kind of like gone to this one area in Mexico called Hualta de Jimenez. And it's a really cool area. It's actually known for, I think her name's Maria Sabanova or Maria. Anyways, I'll have to figure that out. But there was a shaman there who kind of like introduced to the Western world what hallucinogenic mushrooms could do for the world and for the community. And that idea has really resonated. The area is actually still filled with a lot of like indigenous Mazatec people, and that's how they live their lives. And so their connection to agriculture and the earth is much more different than anywhere else I've ever been. And they really believe that the earth has a consciousness, and you have to like live together. And in order to do so, you have to treat the environment like it is your kin, And so that was a really big, like, eye-opening experience when I first went down there and saw this. And then when I got to Goshen, like, I knew I wanted to really explore that area more. So I got to do a trip with Caravella, who I used to work for. And we just were like, I was convinced. I was like, there's got to be good coffee in this area. Like, I've met the people. I know how they feel about their coffee. So this is going to be great. We get down there, and it was literally like just a fact-finding mission. We were going to people that have never worked with Caravella before, that only work with super large export companies that kind of come into town and say, hey, we'll buy your coffee today. If you don't like the price, then good luck. And so we went through and were able to talk to individual producers in the communities and say like, hey, like, we promise you, like, we can pay you tomorrow a better price than what you're being paid now. And if we find better quality, we'll actually pay you more for it. And so, I went through town and we were just getting all these parchment samples and brought them back to the cupping lab in Oaxaca. And I was just blown away. Like, everything was so good. And at the same time, like, these producers had limited access to the broader, especially coffee world, right? And in reality, they were being taken advantage of, because the large corporations that were coming in, like, knew they had delicious coffee, but they were paying like 30 pesos a pound for their coffee and then flipping it for a lot of money. And so really it was the start of this new relationship. And on a personal level, like, it was at the exact same time that like I started going down the path of using hallucinogenics in a doctor background, in an actual doctor's office, to kind of overcome some of the emotional and mental issues that I have. And so it's just this really great like cohesion of thoughts and tastes and where you are in your life to kind of like understand that we are worlds apart, but at the same time, like, we're both using these plants, not just hallucinogens, but coffee, to like make our lives better. And so we ended up calling the coffee from this region, these communities, Shashon, which is a native Mazatec word for a medicinal plant, because that's how we viewed both coffee and hallucinogenic mushrooms. So it's like this really cool long story that, like, when I've tried to write it out, it turns into like a 10-page blog, and it's really hard to narrow it down into a quick little interview. But it's honestly, it's like it was very, very eye-opening and life-changing, to be frank about it.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony, for sharing that story. Because yeah, I mean, I had no idea too, but you know, I mean, here in Hawaii, our connection with people, with the land, you know, we have a word for that, it's called aina, and I can see a lot of parallels between what you experience there to what we do over here in Hawaii as well. So, oh, that's an awesome one.